Hello, welcome to Symbols and Cynicism, a podcast where we talk about all the things I love, some of the things I hate, and this wacky adventure we call life. My name is Bob, I'm your host, and I'm glad you're here today as we talk about Star Wars: A New Hope, Something Neat with Matt, and people who stand up on airplanes. Let's get started. Welcome back. As always, first question, did you do the homework? It was a pretty simple homework, hopefully, but it did take intention. The homework was do something simple, something nice, something free, something that doesn't take a lot of time for someone else. I definitely made this effort this week. I tried very hard to give a little extra greeting to the front desk worker at work. When I go in, I have to sign in, and there's a nice lady. Her name is Stacy. She works behind the desk, and we always said hi. I tried to extend that a little bit this week, and I think I did a pretty good job. I used to say as a teacher, it doesn't take long to build a relationship. It takes long, but it doesn't take long. I used to hear other teachers say, I don't have time to build relationships with students. It doesn't take a 2-hour lunch. It doesn't take sitting down for hours with a person. It takes short moments over long periods of time showing that you care. A greeting in the hallway. Hey, I noticed you're back. Are you feeling better? Hey, is that a new shirt? Hey, did you get your hair cut? Hey, I like your new glasses. Something short. And I tried to extend that into my daily routine. Quick shout out today to my former boss. I got a message from him this week that he loves the TikTok, he loves the podcast, and we always appreciate those notes, whether they're from people we know or people we don't know. Those are great too. So shout out today to the lawn care professionals at Premier Turf Management. Corey, the owner there, and the other folks, man, they do a great job. They love lawns. They love lawn care. No, this is not a paid promotion. I just think they do a great job. I witnessed it day in and day out. And if you need lawn care and you're in my area, give Corey a call at Premier Turf Management. Hopefully Corey's listening right now as he starts his Monday morning route. Lots of other great feedback this week. We blew past 1,200 listens. To me, that's amazing. We love our listeners. When I started this podcast, I didn't know if anyone would listen at all. And so I am so appreciative that you're listening. I hope that you keep listening, and I hope that I am able to keep providing content that you feel is worth 45 minutes to an hour of your day. One listener this week had a great suggestion that we name the Snarky Symbol logo. So here we go. It's our very first contest. Name the logo. If you feel like you have a good name for the Snarky Symbol logo that was created for us by John Suh, send a text using the contact the show link in the description. Now that's private. It's not going to be public information. So please also include your email in your text where we can contact you. I promise we will not spam your account and we will not share that information with anybody else. But we're going to give it a few weeks. Once we have a bunch of names to pick from, if we pick your name, we'll be in contact and we'll send you a free Symbols and Cynicism t-shirt. So text us. Let us know what you think would be a great name for the logo. Wait, there are t-shirts? Well, not yet, but coming soon, there will be. So stay tuned for that. We have some merch in the works. Not ready yet, but soon will be. On today's episode, we take a deep dive into where it all began. Episode 4, Star Wars: A New Hope. We also have something neat with Matt. And what about people who stand up on an airplane? We got a lot to do, so let's get rolling. Today, we are discussing the part of the Star Wars catalog where it all began. Episode 4, A New Hope. We're going to start with a deep dive into set the stage, and then later we'll do some quick hits and favorites. We're not going to do a scene-by-scene blow of the entire movie. No time for that. There's other podcasts that do that too for that. But how about a little background on this movie and the beginning of the saga? Original in theaters, this movie, which we now refer to as A New Hope, was originally just called Star Wars. That's it. It wasn't renamed Episode 4, A New Hope, until Episode 5 became a thing. This movie was written and directed by George Lucas when he was just 33 years old. It hit theaters in May on the 25th of 1977. It was a limited release in a small, less than 40 number of theaters, quickly became a blockbuster, and soon after was then released full in theaters nation and worldwide. Lucas was still very early in his career at the time, with just 2 directorial credits prior to Star Wars. In 1971, he directed a sci-fi picture called THX 1138, which was about a dystopian future where robots control humans with mind-controlled drugs. This had been a college project in film school of his as a short movie, which was supposed to be a 5-minute project. He turned it into 20, and then later turned into a full-length motion picture. THX 1138 was not critically well received, although now it does have a cult following. I watched a little bit of this movie. You can find it on YouTube. It's pretty weird. After THX 1138, he had an idea for another sort of similar themed movie that he wanted to make about an empire crushing the galaxy and a band of rebels who fought back. Sort of a similar idea to THX, where the big bad is overwhelmed by the actions of a small, rebellious few. Sort of a David and Goliath. But first, he would make a coming-of-age story based in the 1960s. No sci-fi at all. Lucas, you see, was born in 1944, so his formative late teens and early 20s were spent in the 1960s. The cars, the drag racing, burger stands, Wolfman Jack on the radio, and so forth. American Graffiti would be an immediate success. Included in that cast, in a supporting role, was a struggling unknown actor named Harrison Ford, who Lucas believed would someday be a huge star. Following American Graffiti, early versions of his new idea included characters called Jedi Bendu and Mace Windu. I think you see where he's going here. In April of 1973, Lucas wrote a 13-page treatment called The Star Wars, which he called a fantasy that has more in common with the Brothers Grimm than 2001: A Space Odyssey. He said his motivation for making the film was to give young people an honest, wholesome fantasy life that would offer romance, adventure, and the fun that used to be in practically every movie. Showing this treatment to movie studios did not prove fruitful. Universal, Paramount, and Disney all turned down the project. Ironic that Disney turned down the project because now, of course, Disney owns all of the Star Wars catalog. Long story short, Star Wars was eventually picked up by 20th Century Fox, who paid Lucas $150,000, which would be just over $1 million in today's dollars. Lucas, in addition, bargained for a deal which included him retaining the rights to all sequels and merchandising. Clearly, this was a brilliant move. Retaining the rights to merchandising at the time was very uncommon. Merchandising wasn't really a thing like it is today. Star Wars sort of began that trend. Lucas's first steps in making his movie was to realize that this story was far too long and far too complicated for just one movie. So he cut it into thirds and that first third became Star Wars. Due to budget and Lucas's relative inexperience as a director, Star Wars encountered endless problems. Lucas only had 2 previous films under his belt and nothing nearly as large an undertaking as Star Wars. Sandstorms, broken droids, special effects on a low-budget, inexperienced actors, inexperienced crew were all a constant problem, not to mention a compressed timeline to get it all done. Nothing like this movie had been made before, and nobody understood the problems and time it would take. Despite the troubles, Star Wars was a massive success and allowed George Lucas some freedoms in making the remainder of his saga. We'll get more into that later. For now, let's get into the movie. First, the classic opening, a silent screen, and then a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Then the opening scroll hits to continue to set the scene and the classic fanfare from composer John Williams. John Williams was one of the few people working on Star Wars that was a well-known quantity. John Williams was already well known for movies such as Jaws. Keep in mind, as you're watching this, you are not watching the original opening release. You're watching a digitally remastered re-release. The difference in this very opening is that in the original release, it did not say Episode 4, A New Hope at the top of the scroll. The original went straight into, it is a period of civil war and so forth. I'll put a link in the description here to the original crawl so you can see it if you like. This opening scroll idea was a direct homage to Flash Gordon, which essentially did the same thing way back in the 1930s. Lucas originally wanted to make a reboot of the Flash Gordon serials, but couldn't get the rights to do so. Then he moved on to Star Wars and decided to include certain homages to the Flash Gordon series. You see, Star Wars has its direct root in a lot of other media, and we see that right from the start. Not only Flash Gordon, but much of the star battles are shot-for-shot remakes of World War II airplane dogfights from the movies. Okay, why Episode 4 and not Episode 1? There are a lot of reasons for this. One was that George Lucas took, again, inspiration from the Flash Gordon series, which was a serial that often started in the middle of a story. He believed that there were always stories before the stories, and wanted to start basically in the middle of the action and tell one standalone story in the middle of a universe that had countless stories surrounding it. It's easy to think of A New Hope as one piece of a storyline that spans so many movies and TV and novels and comic books, but refocus that for a second. Put yourself in 1977. Star Wars is one movie which needed to stand alone in a galaxy that did not yet exist except in the mind of George Lucas. There was no lead-in story, and there certainly was no guarantee that the rest of the story would ever be made. It's one movie that tells the story of one 7-day period of a time leading up to one large space battle. George knew there was more to the story, of course, but wanted to give this movie the sense that we were peeking into one chapter of a much larger novel. And in his mind, the best part of the story was usually somewhere in the middle. So we're picking up the story in the middle, and he uses the opening scroll to be able to skip a lot of that exposition. Indeed, right from the beginning, we feel like we already know the story. It's sort of like on last week's episode in a sitcom, or a recap of the end of the previous season's cliffhangers. We understand right away this is not the beginning of the story, and indeed, right from the beginning, we get a chase scene and a battle. A tiny spaceship is being attacked by a massive Star Destroyer. In the first 30 seconds of the movie, he tells us everything we need to know so far. This is a classic underdog story. Massive empire versus tiny rebellion. No secrets. The opening dialogue is written in such a way that indicates we should already know what's happening. C-3PO referencing the main reactor and the princess escaping again? How could it be again? This is the start of the story. It's as if we already are supposed to know the background, and boom, right into a battle in the hallway. Darth Vader enters, and the music and costuming immediately tell us that he is the big bad. 5 minutes into the movie, and we understand big versus little. There's a princess, there's a menacing character all in black that's probably the villain, and there's no question what this story is about. We meet Vader, the princess, and the droids. We know about something called the Death Star, and know there is some sort of major conflict surrounding it. We know the good guys from the bad, and all with absolutely no info dump. One technique being employed here that's interesting to note is an old opera technique called the idée fixe, or fixed idea. It was first used by composer Hector Berlioz and later by Richard Wagner, who both used a simple musical gesture like a melody, a harmony, or a rhythm, and linked that gesture to a character or idea. Each time the character was on stage, their theme would play, or something would be hinted at even before they arrived on stage. That recurring theme built familiarity with the character and would tell us about their nature. In opera, this is also important because often the opera you're watching is not in the language that you understand. John Williams built this same technique into Star Wars and many of his other films. There's a reason you hear that same theme every time the shark is about to attack in Jaws. Watch the first 10 minutes of A New Hope and focus only on the music. We hear heroism in the hallway with the rebel fighters. We hear menacing music for Vader, and we hear beautiful music for the princess. John Williams is helping us understand everything we need to know, and again, with no info dump. At any rate, from the first few minutes, we get the entire introduction and most of what we need to know about Star Wars. For the next 8.5 minutes of this film, almost no humanoid speaks. C-3PO has dialogue, R2-D2 beeps back, and we hear Jawas muttering in Jawanese, Jawa speak, whatever it is. There are about 2 lines of dialogue by stormtroopers, but they're kind of toss-away lines. The adventure has clearly begun. Soon, we meet Luke, a young, naive farm boy longing for adventure in the stars. Well, sorry. A young, whiny, naive farm boy longing for adventure in the stars. I've often wondered if Lucas told Mark Hamill to play Luke so whiny, or if it was just Hamill's decision.
But I was going into Tosche Station to pick up some power converters.
Oh man, just like reasons to hate Star Wars. That line is at the top of my list. Soon after, we meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, the wise old codger, and now we have all of the major players. The villain, the princess, the hero, the mentor. If only there was a ruffian swashbuckler too, right? Well, we'll be back in a bit with more characters and more scenes from A New Hope. Happy birthday, Matt!
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
It's always Matt's birthday. Welcome back. It's Something Neat with Matt today here on the podcast. Every couple of weeks, Matt is back, brings something for us to sample, bourbon and whiskey. What'd you bring for us today, Matt?
So I was looking around the little home bar last night, trying to figure out what I wanted to bring. And this bottle caught my eye, mostly because it's amazing how elegant it looks. And you would think that it's a lot more expensive than what it is. The bottle is $17.92, and it's very elegant looking, pretty bland, I guess you would say. Gold labeling in the lettering and the numbers, but it's also a small batch. And I was thinking, after the last couple episodes we've done, there's a good bit of lingo that you may come across when you're looking at bottles and what you want to buy.
Yeah, I think last time we mentioned something about cask strength.
And it's like we said originally that, depending on your experience and your taste, you may try a small batch and you may try a single barrel and you may not notice the difference other than maybe the cost. So I guess to start, with this $17.92 being a small batch, if the branding says that it's a small batch, there are no secrets. It's literally from a small batch. And so what that means is that it's made from a select number of barrels, and it's often hand-picked by the distiller. There is no legal definition for how small a small batch has to be. So you may have one distillery that, their small batch is from 500 barrels. There may be another distillery that their small batch is from 10 barrels. I know that when we went to Heaven Hill, every year they have a select stock that is small batch, typically made out of 24 barrels. And that, I guess you could say that that's the number one in my collection as far as price, as far as uniqueness, because you can only buy one bottle, like it's assigned to your driver's license. You can only buy one bottle a year. So that's their definition of small batch is 24 barrels, but another one may be 200 or 300 barrels. The goal with a small batch is to try to have a consistent flavor profile. So you have distilleries that they always want their bourbon or their whiskey to taste exactly the same. So when they have barrels that are aging, the distiller will go through and make sure that, he can blend those barrels and make sure that they get the flavor profile that they want. So then when you start getting into some of the other different types, you have single barrel, you have bottled in bond, cask strength or barrel proof, and then one that's kind of, I don't want to say rare, but you don't see all the time, is non-chill filtered. So I'll touch on these, and if anybody's interested, they can make a comment. We can talk about any of these further.
Sure.
Single barrel, again, no secrets. It is every bottle comes from one individual barrel. It's not blended with others. With that being said, two barrels from the same distillery may have a completely different flavor profile. So when you get into single barrels, you may even see more additional labeling on a bottle that says it's from this barrel in this batch. I've never gotten into that, but there are some people that are pretty particular about. It's like wine. Like, a 2010 Napa is different than a 2018 Napa because of the weather and all that kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah.
So then you have bottled in bond. This is how they distill this is defined by the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897. You'll see that there are government labels that are still printed and sealed so that, they know that it's followed the regulations set forth by the government.
This one always intrigues me because that whole thing started as a law because distillers, in order to get it to be brown, were adding things like shoe shine and tobacco juice, and they were like poisoning it almost,
Right.
And so the government stepped in and said, whoa, you can't color your whiskey brown by adding tobacco juice and
Yes.
gross stuff. So it's funny that of course, I don't think a distiller would do that today, but they still label things bottled in bond, sort of like historically speaking.
Yeah, it's tradition at this point, and to just kind of go along with, what they used to do long before me.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's bottled in bond has to be aged at least 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse. They're always bottled at exactly 100 proof. So everywhere you go, if you ever see bottled in bond, it's going to be 100 proof, no questions asked. And again, it's authenticity and it's quality. You know that it's going to be exactly what it is. Cask strength and barrel proof. This is basically they pop the cork on the barrel and they pour it in the bottle, and what you see is what you get. Now, with that being said, it's going to be a little bit higher proof than what you would normally have if you'd have a small batch or something like that, because this is not cut with water or anything like that. So you may have, anything between 105, 110 up to 130 or 135 proof, which the higher the proof, the more it burns and the more you feel it in your chest.
Right.
And so, a cask strength barrel proof is, that's something for, the veterans of the bourbon experience that, then they can really taste all of the delicacies of the bourbon. The last one, again, is the chill filtering process is, you can really go down a rabbit hole in this whole concept. But basically, when they take a bourbon from a barrel, they will chill it down to maybe like 50 or 60 degrees, and then they'll put it through a filter. And that's what gets out all of the little materials. And I have a bottle that's non-chill filtered at home, and you can see some, I'll call them floaties. Mm-hmm. But there are people that say when you remove those, you remove some of the true flavor of the bourbon. So if it's non-chill filtered, all of that sediment is still left in the bottle, and it's supposed to add some flavor, I guess, to it. I don't notice a lot of difference.
So when I go to buy a bottle of bourbon, I rarely look at small batch, very small batch, single batch. I mean, I just buy the bourbon that I think I'm going to like. Should I be paying attention to this stuff?
I would say if you're starting out, you would probably want to look for small batch just so that you can be consistent. I guess that's the one thing that I did early on when I started is I found a bourbon, even if I didn't like it, like I'm going to drink it, not every night, but like this, I'm going to be pretty consistent about it, and then take a drink from another bourbon, and then you can really find the difference. So small batch is a good way to start because then you know that you're always going to be getting the same thing. If you buy a barrel proof and then you buy another barrel proof of, let's say, Elijah Craig, the two of them may be different. You may not really taste a difference, but there's a little bit of difference there. So yeah, you should pay attention to it. Probably the thing that's going to stick out the most is the price.
Right. Will small batch be more expensive?
No, small batch will probably be cheaper.
Cheaper?
Yeah.
Okay.
Barrel proof is a little bit more of a premium product. So that's what's going to be a little higher in price.
Well, because they're not cutting it with water, so they don't get as many bottles out of a barrel.
Right.
Right, because it's barrel proof, it's straight from the bottle.
Right.
Or straight from the barrel. It's also higher in alcohol and higher, I mean, it's stronger, it's a stronger taste because it's not cut with water.
Right.
Interesting. Well, yeah, this bottle is not probably one that I would, probably not one that my eyes, this is 1792, my eyes would probably not gravitate to this bottle. It's just kind of a boring...
It is. It's a very boring bottle.
Kind of a boring bottle, but the bourbon is good. It's got a bit of a sweet. I would call it sweet, sort of mapley.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a spice, but it's got a good rich vanilla taste. Maybe some fruits in there, and it was interesting. I had heard somebody a while ago say that if they were going to compare it to another bourbon, they would probably compare it to Elijah Craig. And Elijah Craig is maybe a little bit more expensive. This bottle you can probably get between $30 and $40, and it's pretty much at any store that you're going to go to. This is a pretty common bourbon.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. I had this first time a couple of years ago. I think at a restaurant or something. It was just one of those. Hey, I've never tried this. I think I probably texted you and said, "Would I like this?" It's on the mild sweet side. You probably like that. So that's usually what I do is look at the 150 bourbons they have on the menu and go, "Hey Matt, which one of these would I like?" Because you've tasted a little more variety, quite a bit more variety than I have. So yeah, I like this. This is good, and this is available at most stores. Yeah. You don't have to go too far. Yeah. Hey Matt, thanks for being here today. It was a joy. This is 1792. I give it a B+.
I would agree. Yeah.
You would agree?
B+.
Yeah.
B+. Yeah.
B+. And for the price range, I mean, solid A for the price range.
Yeah, I mean, price range, drink it every night if you want.
Yeah, well, please always drink responsibly.
Yes.
And don't drink and drive.
Should. Responsibly. Right. At night.
Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. And we're back with more Star Wars. Why did I stop? Such a weird spot. Because we're about to talk about Han. And as a kid, Han was one of my favorite characters. Maybe my favorite. Though I do admit to spending a fair amount of my youth thinking his name was Hans Olo, not Han Solo. But before we get into that, we have to meet another really important character, the Force. And yes, I believe the Force is a character. And by the way, so are the ships. More on that in a minute. So what is the Force?
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
We think of the Force as something to be used in battle or something to control people's minds or something. But the real perspective of the Force is it's a beautiful aura that surrounds us and connects us and connects everyone. Read the High Republic novels, and it talks about the Force as a song that vibrates through individuals. It's a beautiful, beautiful concept. There are some curiosities in this scene, too. Obi-Wan doesn't seem to remember the droids and sort of fuzzy with his memory. I guess we could chalk that up to old age, but he doesn't seem to be experiencing memory loss in any other way. So is it an error in the story? I believe it to be an error in the story, simple as that. For as much seamless Star Wars as there is over, keep in mind, decades of storytelling, and not all in the correct order, there are going to be continuity mistakes. It is impossible to start in the middle of a story and then tell the beginning and then the end-ish and then other pieces of the middle without something seeming off, whether that's inconsistencies in the story, technology, scenery, etc. And I believe this to be one of those cases. You don't think about it when it's just Star Wars. When you think of it in the grand scope of Star Wars, it seems a little odd that Obi-Wan doesn't remember C-3PO and R2-D2. We also get our first explanation of Vader and Luke.
A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father.
Sort of a vague, Obi-Wan does that look in his eye as if something else might be up. Remember, George Lucas wrote all three of these movies as a single story, then divided it into pieces. So while we're watching it in 1977, not knowing about Luke's father, we just know that he lived with his uncle and his aunt. Obi-Wan knows the story because George Lucas knew the story, even though we won't for years. Okay, fast forward, skip to the Death Star. Interesting meeting here, right? Sort of blurry as to who's in charge. Is it Tarkin? Is it Vader? Vader clearly has some authority. He is standing in the meeting. But yet, when Admiral Motti openly mocks him.
Don't try to frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes, or given you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden fort.
Then, Vader chokes him.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Tarkin tells Vader to stop choking him, and Vader obeys.
Enough of this. Vader, release him.
As you wish.
Who's really in charge? From the future, we know Palpatine is involved, and they mention the Emperor, but we don't see Palpatine in this movie. Throughout Star Wars, this dynamic, particularly on the Empire side, this dynamic of military leaders versus Sith leaders continues to be a theme of who's really in charge. Another mistake here coming up, back on Tatooine, Luke and Obi-Wan are examining the wreck of an attack, and Obi-Wan states,
These blast points, too accurate for sand people. Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise.
Except in the world we know today, we know stormtroopers are notoriously inaccurate. Are we again chalking this up to being too early in the story, that's not a fully developed plot line? I sort of think it like Obi-Wan's been in isolation for approximately 19 years between the end of the Clone Wars and the beginning of this story. He was, if you've watched the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, he does come out of hiding for a little bit. We're not sure the rest of the story, but for the most part, he's in hiding. The last stormtroopers he knew, right before Order 66, are ones that were accurate. They were high-quality warriors because they were the direct clones. Once the Empire took over, they destroyed the clone program And stormtroopers now are sort of random recruits or people pressed into battle. But wait, these shots are accurate? So why are these stormtroopers accurate if most you know what? We're just going to suspend our disbelief and move on with our life to Mos Eisley, the wretched hive of scum and villainy. I was fascinated by some of these scenes when I was a kid. Obi-Wan can make the weak-minded do as he wishes by placing suggestions in their mind, making them think it was their idea in the first place. That seemed really, really cool to me, and probably I wanted to make my teachers do that. You will give me no homework. You will give us extra recess. Of course, it never really worked, but Jedi mind tricks aren't real. We'll see this Jedi mind trick throughout Star Wars, and I appreciate it doesn't always work, right? It only works on the weak-minded, and it would make sense that stormtroopers are weak-minded. To the cantina, now we have our first lightsaber activation with intent to use. Sure, a few minutes ago, Luke turned on his father's lightsaber back at Obi-Wan's, but that was out of curiosity. Here, Obi-Wan lights it and uses it and makes a mess. And in typical Jedi fashion, walks away from the mess, right? And here we are now with my hero, Han. And incidentally, my wife's favorite character is Chewie, the ride-or-die friends of the Star Wars universe. And how about the Millennium Falcon? Perhaps the most famous character in the Star Wars universe. And yes, I believe the Millennium Falcon to be a character. Don't you have a certain feeling in your stomach every time you see the Millennium Falcon, like, there it is? For the record, I do believe that Han shot first. Can we prove it? Of course not. And now we have all of the major players, really, for the entire trilogy. Yeah, we'll add a few characters along the way, but we have our core band of rebels, and we have our core group of villains, and the adventure truly begins. I don't want to go scene by scene because either you've seen this movie or you can watch it yourself. Disney Plus, it's on the weekends on TV sometimes and those sorts of things. So you can go watch it if you haven't seen it already. If you haven't seen it in a really long time, I suggest you go back and watch it and think of it from a perspective as the only movie in the series. But pretend it's the only thing. Fast forward to the Death Star, where we have our first rebels posing as a stormtrooper. Another often used Star Wars trope. We see this again and again, even as we rewind into the Clone Wars series. Rebels, right? Ezra's always in a Star Wars costume, or always in a stormtrooper costume. We also have our first glimpse of the R2-D2 data connection point that is on every starship, including the Imperial ones. I truly believe that if the Empire had just changed data ports at some point so that R2 couldn't patch in, this war would have been over quickly and the Empire would have come out on top. How many times does R2 save the day because he can plug his little data guy into that little round thing and save the day? Right? Contact the this, move the that, open the this, close something else. That data port is really the secret rebel weapon. If you need a good laugh now, start your movie at around 1 hour and 22 minutes. One of my favorite moments in Star Wars history, and it's silly, and I think it's my favorite moment because I watched this movie about 1 million times before I even noticed it, and now I can't not. Watch the right side of the screen, listen and watch, and then laugh, as I do, as the stormtrooper hits his head on the way in the door. On the right side, there's a taller stormtrooper than anybody else. The door doesn't go quite all the way up. It probably was a mechanical failure of some point, and the stormtrooper bangs his head on the door on the way in. I've always loved mistakes in movies. It makes them maybe feel real, feel more human. It's like on a stage play when somebody forgets their lines and they act their way through it, right? That happens in life. We're talking and we forget the next word. We're talking and we forget, we lose our train of thought. We stumble on our words. That happens in real life. And so when mistakes happen in movies, they somehow feel a little more real. And honestly, it doesn't matter how many times I've seen this scene and he's seen him bump his head. It still makes me laugh. Okay, back to the action. When you think Star Wars, do you think lightsaber battles? Epic one-on-one or more than one battles with laser swords? Have you always believed that Star Wars is defined by these duels? Did you realize that in A New Hope there is only one such duel? It's 63-year-old Alec Guinness, who plays Obi-Wan Kenobi, against David Prowse, who is the body of Darth Vader, whose costume did not allow him to move freely for the battle. And it lasts about 90 seconds of total screen time. From the moment they clash sabers till the moment Vader kills Obi-Wan. Remember, no spoiler alerts, because this is a movie from 1977. Minus the cutaways to other action on the Death Star, it's about 90 seconds. And it's kind of awkward because Alec Guinness is 63 years old and David Prowse can't move. And in my opinion, while it is an important battle, because it is the first battle, and it is an establishing element of Star Wars, it is one of the least good battles. Amazing to think that something that is such a staple of Star Wars canon started as such a lame scene in a movie. I told you a couple of episodes ago, I am not a Star Wars apologist. I love Star Wars, but there are problems and there are mistakes and there are errors, and we need to be real about that. Right into the next scene as they escape, and this is another one of my least favorite scenes. Leia is consoling Luke. Let me say that again. Leia is consoling Luke. Sure, that makes sense, right? After all, Luke just saw his mentor die. A mentor he's known for like 2 days. Remember, at the beginning of this movie, old Ben Kenobi is just a mythical rumor. He does not know Obi-Wan. They don't meet until Obi-Wan rescues him from the Sand People. Meanwhile, all Leia has recently witnessed was the destruction of her entire planet and potentially her parents, for all we know. Then, she was tortured and, locked in a cell. So why not console him? Oh, I'm so sorry the space wizard you've known for 2 days is dead. Never mind that millions of people from my home planet are dead. Why? Well, quite frankly, it's the 70s, and that's the sexist thing that we do in the 70s, probably. We let the woman console the man. People ask what's not to like about Star Wars, and it's this kind of thing. To me, that's one of them. So anyway, we're escaping, and this is one of the scenes that's basically a shot-for-shot remake of a World War II fighter pilot movie scene. Lucas actually provided the editing team with cut scenes from World War II fighter movies and had to match them shot for shot. They weren't producing in their edits what he wanted to see. He wanted to see World War II in space. So he sat down and cut some old black and white film strip together and gave it to them, and they copied it shot for shot. Soon afterwards, we're making the bombing runs on the Death Star, and the same thing happens. In fact, it's not only shot for shot, it's the dialogue. I'm going to put a link in the description that actually puts examples of these two side by side. The Death Star run from the bombing of the Death Star, side by side with a World War II movie about the blowing up of a dam. So Death Star, dam, bombing runs on both. It's really fascinating that they are almost exactly the same. Am I saying that Star Wars cheated? No, I'm saying that George Lucas loved paying homage to things that he loved, whether that's Flash Gordon or World War II, Jedi lightsaber battles, or samurai sword fights. He was combining all of these things into a space opera. Of course, Han Solo saves the day, and the heroes are rewarded, except for Chewie. Chewie gets screwed. No medal for Chewie. Not yet, at least. My wife hates this scene for that very reason, because Chewie is her favorite. Wrapping it up, this movie is amazing for the world it creates and for what it becomes. George Lucas is amazing for what he created in the world that he created and what it becomes over decades. But there are a lot of holes here, a lot of mistakes, a lot of plot points, a lot of sort of not great movie making. Part of that's budget. Part of that is technology. Part of it is just being young. George Lucas was 33. Do I love it? Heck yes, I love it. It's freaking Star Wars. It does a great job of setting the story. It gives us all the main characters, or most. It gives us all the great music. It gives us all the great themes, the Force, the lightsabers, good versus evil, big versus little, the classic underdog story, and most importantly, it sets the table for everything that is to come. Without this movie, there is no Star Wars. Shortly after this movie debuts, the merchandise hits and the demand is so huge, Kenner can't keep up. In Christmas of that year, they actually sold empty boxes with promises that they would ship you the thing. Can you imagine a child on Christmas morning opening up an empty box with a picture of what they're going to get as soon as Kenner catches up with demand? No one was prepared for this blockbuster. Nothing had ever happened quite like this. Planning would soon begin for the next chapter in the saga, and we'll get into that in next week's episode for some serious fanboy material. I mentioned earlier in an episode that Empire is my favorite Star Wars movie, so be prepared for some serious drooling. That movie is nearly perfect. This movie, solid B in my opinion as a Star Wars movie. It's not in my top 3, and honestly, it's really only probably maybe in my top 5 because if it's important to the canon as the first movie and establishing moments of the entire canon. But, as I like to say, Star Wars is like pizza, and even bad pizza is still pizza. I hope you enjoyed our tour through A New Hope. Star Wars is great. Life is great. Go watch some Star Wars.
That's it. No. Breathe. Find your happy place.
Airplanes. There are certainly a lot of things to rant about when it comes to air travel. But have you ever been on a plane and landed, and the moment the plane stops, everyone stands up immediately? Right? And then they stand there for like 5 minutes. Man, that drives me nuts. A plane is not like a car. It doesn't stop and then the doors pop open and everybody can jump out. That's not how planes work. Things need to happen. They need to engage the parking brakes and shut down the engines, connect the jet bridge and so forth. Like there's things that take place. It takes time. And now, as I sit patiently waiting, your butt is in my face because there isn't enough room for us all to stand up. Then there's the person from the back row that keeps squeezing ahead, one person at a time, to be one of the first people off. I guess what they want is to be the first person to the baggage carousel to wait on their luggage. Or I guess maybe they are carry-on only and don't need to go to the baggage claim like the rest of us ruffians. Whatever it is, look, let's just all agree to stay seated, wait patiently, and exit the plane from the front row moving backward. Don't stand up right away. It's ludicrous. I feel better. You feel better? I feel better. This week's homework is a bit of a challenge. It comes from something last episode that Bob Spath said. He said something like, get going. You need to get a start, or something of that nature. So the homework this week is to make a list of 3 to 5 things you think would be fun or rewarding to do, but that you've never tried. Maybe it's run a 5K. Maybe you run 5Ks, it's run a marathon. Maybe it's to start a podcast or learn to crochet. It can be anything. Make the list and then start to investigate what it might take to do one of them. Start the move toward that new hobby, toward that new skill. Look up, what do I do when I run a 5K? What do I have to do to start a podcast? What do I have to do to learn to crochet? And no, I can't crochet. And it's not particularly a skill that I ever want to have. You'll never know what it takes until you take the first step to making it happen. And you'll never know the rewards of having done it. And maybe along the way you'll say, nah, this is not for me. And that's okay too. But at least you tried it. Okay, that's the show. Make sure you leave a rating, drop a comment, or send a message on the app of your choice. We are also on TikTok and Instagram, Symbols and Cynicism in both places. Constructive comments and messages help us make the show better. You can text the show with the link at the bottom of the description, and you can support us just below that. We hope you'll join us next time as we discuss episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. We'll have my running distance next week and sports salaries. Thanks for joining me today. The theme music today is Superfly, written by me, copyright RHS Music. The show logo was designed by John Suh, and this show is produced by my sister, Kathy. I hope you'll join us next time for more reflection and ranting on Symbols and Cynicism.